Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into one of the most fascinating and honestly pretty elaborate corners of modern metaphysical literature. We're talking about the Azozeo Super-Activation. We're going to unpack these really intriguing claims, tracing them all the way from ancient esoteric texts right up to a very tangible, modern-day case study, which is the spiritual activation of New Zealand White Azeztulite. It's a wildly captivating narrative, so let's just jump right in. Now, I know it sounds a bit like the plot of an Indiana Jones movie, right? But could a 2,000-year-old text actually hold the key to activating the Earth's crystals? Well, this is exactly where author Robert Simmons traces the origins of his modern practice. According to Simmons, the entire foundation for what he calls the Azozeo activation is rooted in an ancient apocryphal Gnostic text known as the Book of Ieou. The source material claims this text was originally intended as a literal manual for spiritual ascension from 2 millennia ago. And what's truly interesting here is how Simmons bridges the gap between these ancient manuscripts and modern-day crystal practices. He was actually researching his own work when he stumbled upon this text, and what he found completely shifted his understanding of the stones he was already working with. So looking at the Book of Ieou, it lays out a very specific set of instructions. It says, when you reach the 4th eon, seal yourself with this seal. This is its name, Azozeo. Say it once only. Hold this cipher, 4555, in your hands. This passage is describing a specific stage of ascension involving these protective beings. And Simmons points out something really key here. The word used for protection, Azozeo, and the names of the protective beings mentioned later in the text, well, they all share distinct similarities with the word Azez. In his writings, the Azez are described as angelic beings who actually pre-announced the arrival of Azeztulite crystals to help humanity. So according to the source, holding these specific stones supposedly connects you directly with these protective beings that have been aiding human spiritual evolution for thousands of years. Okay, so let's move forward and see how this ancient cipher suddenly turns into a modern physical practice. Fast forward to August 2012. Simmons describes sitting on the porch of his Vermont home, just gazing out at a labyrinth he'd actually built out of azeztulites and rosafia stones. He's sitting there pondering these ancient texts, wondering if the crystals he worked with were, fully awakened, or if there was maybe another octave of energy that just hadn't been accessed yet. And the source details that at that precise moment, he had a powerful vision. With his inner eyes, he claims to have seen a pyramid, glowing with light, hovering right over the center of his labyrinth. This vision was the absolute catalyst. It gave him a direct blueprint to physically construct a chamber that he believed would stimulate these stones to a much, much higher level of activation. So you might be wondering, how do you actually super-activate a crystal? Well, according to Simmons' vision, it requires a highly precise multi-step ritual. First, you erect a copper pyramid right in the center of the labyrinth. Next, you create what's called a circuit of light by placing large Phenacite crystals at both the apex and the base of that pyramid. Then, the unactivated Azeztulite stones are carefully arranged on a glass table in the exact center. After that, Simmons attached that ancient word of invocation, Azozeo, to the 4 directions of the table. He walked the labyrinth in a ritual state, placed the stones, and spoke the word Azozeo out loud to the 4 directions and silently to the 5th. Finally, the whole setup just sits there for one complete 24-hour cycle of night and day. It's presented as this highly intentional, co-creative process between human action and mineral properties. 18 pounds. Seriously, just think about that for a second. That is the sheer weight of the massive, terminated Brazilian Phenacite single crystal that Simmons placed at the base of his copper pyramid. Imagine lugging that into the center of a labyrinth. He actually notes that he believes it's the world's largest of its kind. He also placed a 2-pound African Phenacite up at the apex. The source emphasizes that Phenacite has a really close energetic relationship with Azeztulite, and placing this immense 18-pound stone at the base was supposedly absolutely crucial to generating the required energy field for the activation. It really just highlights the sheer physical scale of the materials used in this metaphysical experiment. So, after that 24-hour waiting period, Simmons claims the results were dramatic. He stated the stones had literally more than doubled in their intensity. But what exactly is that intensity supposed to be? Well, the text introduces a concept called celestial fire. It describes it as a stream of subtle matter and divine light originating from the great central sun. The Azozeo stones allegedly act as grounding wires for this energy. When holding the super-activated stones, the author claims to have felt these spiraling currents of celestial fire spinning rapidly down through his body, entering the crown and spreading this web that infused every single cell with divine light, before finally grounding deep into the earth. To really grasp what this energy is supposedly doing, we need to look at how Simmons categorizes human intelligence. He argues that we become way too reliant on our default mental intelligence, which is based in the brain. Over-relying on this, the text argues, has basically caused humanity to lose touch with its wholeness. Then there's soul intelligence, based in the heart, which he describes as the seat of divine imagination. He says this has been a reawakening in recent decades. But the absolutely crucial point here is the third category, universal intelligence. The author claims this resides in the entire cellular matrix of the body. According to the text, the Azozeo crystals specifically target and awaken this universal body-based intelligence.
And Simmons makes a pretty staggering promise about human potential here. He writes, what we now call inspiration and intuition will become pure vision, and we will see and know whatever we wish to understand simply by attending to it and feeling the knowledge in ourselves. The source claims that the subtle matter from these super-activated crystals actually bonds with the gross physical matter of our bodies. Just imagine a reality where you don't have to study or memorize, but where your very cells act as literal antennas for pure knowledge. It is a bold claim, for sure, suggesting a future where we don't just learn information, we physically embody it.
All right, so we've explored the complex ritual and these really broad theories of cellular intelligence. Now, let's zoom in and apply these concepts to a very specific, tangible case study mentioned in the source material, Zealand White Azeztulite. The author notes that after his initial success with the ritual, he started testing other stones in that Azozeo energy field. And this particular variety of crystal from New Zealand is one of the stones that successfully undergoes the super-activation process. Let's look at exactly what makes this specific stone and its activation so unique. First off, this isn't just your everyday quartz. Found exclusively in a remote, mountainous region of New Zealand, this specific stone, once it's put through the Azozeo process, is said to emanate a pure ray of what the author calls nameless light. On an emotional level, the source claims it acts as a really powerful cleanser. It supposedly releases highly constricted negative patterns, specifically things like grief, depression, anxiety, and anger, and replaces them with the essence of deep joy. Ultimately, the source claims its main purpose is to blend its own super-activated energies with the user to rekindle their inner spiritual flame. To really capture the vibe, the purported atmosphere and feeling of interacting with this specific super-activated stone, the source gives us a rather poetic description. Simmons writes, "To be with this stone is like walking with an angel beside you." And this ties perfectly back to the beginning of our explainer, where the text linked the Azez and the Azozeo activation directly to those protective, angelic beings described in ancient Gnostic texts. The source suggests that holding this New Zealand stone is meant to provide a deeply comforting, guided, and spiritually elevated experience. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, tracing an idea from a 2,000-year-old apocryphal text right through a modern-day labyrinth in Vermont, all the way to a remote mountain peak in New Zealand. To conclude our explainer today, I want to leave you with this final provocative question, derived directly from the core claims of the source material. If streams of subtle matter can truly bond with our physical cells, as the author claims, are we standing at the dawn of a completely new body-based intelligence? Whether you view this as literal energetic mechanics, or maybe just as a fascinating metaphor for human potential and mindfulness, the framework provided by the Azozeo phenomenon definitely challenges our traditional understandings of intuition, intellect, and the material world. Thanks for joining me to explore this text, and keep questioning the world around you.